Welcome back, Greg. My name is Jean Bell. I direct the Advancing Practice program at the Nonprofit Quarterly. And we are so pleased to be in partnership with Greg and his team and QuickBooks Made Easy, because we think this is some of the most useful, practical, but sophisticated, despite that opening, training in QuickBooks that's available. And it's very nonprofit specific. And so we're just thrilled to bring it to you because we know that QuickBooks is how most of the sector is doing its accounting. And today we're going to focus on budgeting specifically. Don't forget that this is being recorded. You will in a couple of days receive a recording with the slides. And we also ask you to stay on for 2 minutes at the end of Greg's presentation to complete a pop-up evaluation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, and thank you again for being here.
Yes, and thank you, Jean. That was Supertramp, which if you've been to one of my webinars before, you know I like Supertramp a lot. But so if you could just put in the chat, I want to make sure that everybody can hear me and that I sound fine. I'm not too loud, not too soft, whatever. So somebody say in there, yeah, sounds good. Okay, cool. So everybody's good. I'm good. All right. Yay. All right. So first thing, let's just move on here. So now I'm a CPA, if you don't know that, and I specialize in nonprofit organizations. So I do, I have about 100 990s that I do a year. We do a bunch of audits, and we have a few hundred nonprofit clients that we help in one way or the other throughout the year, bookkeeping, year end, whatever. And then I have a company, and the company is QuickBooks Made Easy for Nonprofits. And in that company, we have training products that are streamable, that they're on demand, so you can basically go through courses on demand. It comes with a follow-along handbooks. We also have technical support, and I know a number of you are already tech support clients of us, where you can call and ask us questions. And when you do that, you're going to get either me, or you're going to get Jenny, or you're going to get Paige, or you're going to get Barb. And Barbara Starley is actually in the background helping us to answer questions. So Barbara, if you want to just say hello to everybody for a second, just so that they know that you're there, because I'm sure some of you.
Hey, everybody.
All right,
cool.
On the
call. I'll be answering behind the scenes.
All right, cool. So, oh, and I should tell you, the way that we're going to do the questions is we've got, what do we have? 160 or so people in the class. So here's how I want to do this. The chat is how I operate. So like I'll be teaching, and if somebody puts questions in, I'll see them in the chat. Some questions are really long though, like a paragraph, and I don't have time to read that while I'm on the fly. So longer questions like that, specific scenarios, that's something you can put in the Q&A. Everything else you can stick in the chat, and I'll get it as we go. Anyway, so I'd love to have a webinar on using QuickBooks Desktop as the CRM. So it's interesting. I haven't framed one that way, Kevin, but we have it in our training that way. We have a chapter in it, but that's an interesting idea for a title of a webinar. I think that's good. Bill, write that down. I think that's good. But anyway, so if you call, Barbara may be one of the ones that you'll be talking to. We can even dial in. Then, of course, we have seminars and webinars. Remember, enough about that. I'll get to that. Let's just dive right in and talk about what we're going to cover, okay? So let's see. So obviously this whole hour and a half, and we are going to take a break about 45 minutes in, by the way. So, you know, I promise you I'll keep it interesting. And then, but if you could just like pay attention, because I don't want you to miss anything. And in 45 minutes, you'll be able to take a break, okay? So, but anyway, so entering your budget is what we're going to be talking about. And there are a number of people that when they enter a budget, all they really need to do is enter what my income's going to be by income account or income category, like how much am I going to get for donations and how much am I going to get for grants, and then expense, how much am I going to get for travel, how much I'm going to spend for supplies, how much I'm going to spend for salaries. So that's the only way you really need to budget. So we're going to cover that first, okay? And we're going to do it by month, and we're going to do it by year, okay? Then there are those people that would like to budget by program. In other words, rather than just saying, how much am I going to spend all year long for supplies, they want to have a separate budget for each one of your programs. And we'll talk about how to do that as well. And you can, if you'd like, also have budgets for your grants. You can track grants in QuickBooks and compare them to a budget. These budgets are the 3 different kinds of budgets you can get in QuickBooks, and you can enter for the same year, you can enter one of each of these things, and they don't talk to each other. They're separate budgets, okay? So we'll go through all of that today. Let's see. I need also to budget by grant within the program. Well, that's not a problem because you can do a budget by grant and then filter it to only include the one program. Will you address indirect in the budget planning? Yes, I will. I certainly will. And let's see, reporting, budget overview, and budget versus actual. There are some other reports that I'm going to give you as well, provided we have time, but that's how we're going to run. So we're going to start by showing you how to enter the budget, and then we're going to end by doing the reporting. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to run. So are the slides available? Yes, they are. However, Deborah, the slides are meaningless. You've pretty much seen all the slides. We're going to spend the whole time in the program. But fortunately, you've got the recording as well. Okay. So if there is nobody else, unless you want to talk about politics, anybody want to talk about the upcoming election? Hello? No. Wow. Somebody said to vote. Everybody else said no. All right. Well, so let's get rolling. All right. There is one overview thing. And I did see the question about grants bleeding between years and budgeting for them. And yes, you can do that, and we're going to cover it. Anyway, so there are 3 things. This is kind of an overview. It's not even really related to budgets, but I need you to understand this concept before we get into budgeting. Okay. So when you enter an expense, there are 3 things that you should be telling QuickBooks. And many of you probably aren't doing this yet. Hopefully you should be. If you don't know this, you need some extra training. But when you enter an expense, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you're telling QuickBooks what is the natural category. Some people call it the account. Most people do. Some people call it the object of the expense. Examples of this are travel, supplies, rent. These are the natural ways of thinking about expenses. And I'm going to go over here to QuickBooks. And when you enter, we'll say you enter a check. This count here is what you're supposed to put here, and how your books are supposed to be set up is you're supposed to put the natural category there. All right. The second thing that you need to track, and this is only for a regular charity. Houses of worship don't have to do this, but everybody else does. We have to track the program that it went to. Basically, funders want to know whether when you spend money, did it go for program costs, did it go for admin costs, or did it go for fundraising costs? And if it went for program, which program did it go for? And so you want to use the class feature in QuickBooks to track that. Okay, so over here is where you'd put whether it was a program expense, admin, or fundraising. And yes, you can split between different programs if you need to. All right. And then the third thing that you need to track, and this you only need to track if you have restricted grants, but if you have restricted grants, you want to be able to tell QuickBooks which grantor paid for an expense, okay? So that you can get a report showing you how you did with what you did with the money that you got from a specific grant. The best way of handling this is using the customer job feature. Some people use the class feature to track their grants. Theoretically, technically, you're supposed to use the class feature. Let me see here. Oh, I need to put my my clicker on here, my little arrow. Hold on one second. Click tricks. Okay, let me open this up. You're supposed to use the class feature to track your program's admin and fundraising. And then, there we go. And then you use the customer job feature to point it to a grant. So I'm going to go over here. And we use the customer job feature. So this is where we point it to a grant. And if part of it is paid for out of a grant and part of it is not paid for out of a grant, we could either leave this blank, or some people create a grant, a customer called unfunded, and then they point the expense to the unfunded if it's not paid for out of a grant. What is the benefit of this? The benefit of this is now I can do a report. I can do a profit and loss standard that's by account. I'll make this for the year, this fiscal year, but I can also make it be by class, and then I got a column to see how much I spent in each program, how much I did in admin, and how much I did in fundraising. And then I also can do it by customer job. And then I can get a report that gives me a P&L for each grant, okay? So that is something that you need to understand, because what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to do budgets to compare to each of those three reports. A budget to actual for your account only, a budget to actual by program, and a budget to actual by grant, all right? So I'm going to stop for a second because we've got 160 people on the call, and if there are people here that are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, we need to stop and we need to make sure you understand what I'm saying before we go any further. So is there anybody that is clueless about this thing, doesn't know what I'm talking about? Please say something in the chat. Don't feel embarrassed. Let's see, Julia, is customer job the same as customers in the customer list? Exactly. So the customer list is right here, and a customer is here. If you decided that you wanted to have a sub customer, that's what QuickBooks calls a job, okay? Let's see, can you do that P&L by customer type? You can filter it by type, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. My grants are by class. If that's what you're doing, I won't fight you on it. I'm just wonder how you find out what you spend on program versus admin versus fundraising, but the process of entering a budget is the same. Let's see, this is a different structure than I want to move towards, not using class for grants. That's another one. Okay, I already addressed that. Let's see, I did not know about tracking grants as a customer. Did you use the customers for both grants and donors? Yes, Patricia, I do. I put my donors and my grantors in the customer list. And then if it's a grant, like the Villa Foundation, what I do is I'll go over here to additional info and I create a type called restricted grant. And then I give them that type. So then I'll be able to figure out what my restricted grants are, okay? Let's see. The billable field, okay, billable fields is not relevant. She already answered that. I don't know about the jobs for grants either because we use classes. So all I'm suggesting to you is that if you're using classes to track your grants, I don't understand how you're tracking program versus admin versus fundraising. So, but what you should be doing is using the customer job field. So nothing really to know. You just go to the list, you go up here, you click new customer, you type your grant in, and then once you do that, then you'll be able to start pointing expenses to it using this field right here. And then you can get reports. All right. So I think I'm going to get started with budgeting now. Thank you for those people that already knew that and were patient. And first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where to go to create a budget. Okay. Now there's only one place you can go if you want to enter a budget in QuickBooks, and that is you go to the company field right up here. And I'm going to go down to planning and budgeting, and I'm going to go to set up budgets. I do see somebody asked a question about receiving grants. So we have a restricted grant webinar that we do. but that's not what this webinar is. So I'm going to kind of wait and not talk about that. We're going to spend the rest of the time talking about budgets. Okay, so hopefully you're okay with that. All right, so I'm going to go to click Set Up Budgets. And I want you to see, first of all, now I'm going to teach you everything there is to know. So instead of asking questions just for a minute, if you could just look and let me teach, because I'm going to teach you some stuff that's going to blow you away. Okay, so here we go. So, and then we'll stop every few minutes and take questions. All right, so under planning and budgeting, we have set up budgets and we have set up forecast. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the forecast in a second. So I'm going to click Set Up Budgets. This is where you go to create a budget. If you have already created a budget, then the last budget you created will appear here. If you've never created a budget, then you'll immediately go to a screen where you can add a budget. Because we already have a budget, they're listed. This one's showing, but you see this button over here that says Create New Budget. You just click on it, and it will take you where to go to create a new budget. So the first thing it wants to know is what fiscal year you want to create a budget for. So when you set up your QuickBooks desktop file, it asks you what your fiscal year is. And so once you answer it, and in this particular example, this fiscal year begins July 1 and ends on June 30. Okay, it bleeds between calendar years. So that's why my choices are January 21 to 22, 20 to 21, 19 to 20. So now I'm going to do one for 2021. So I'm entering a budget for July of 2020 to June of 2021, which is probably what a lot of people are doing. Okay. So you can do a budget for a profit and loss or a balance sheet. Nobody does a balance sheet. So profit and loss, I go to next. Now, there are, and I mentioned this already, there are 3 kinds of budgets that you can enter for a particular year. You can enter what's called a no additional criteria budget, which is what we're going to do first. This is where you just budget by account only, income account and expense account. If you want to enter a budget by program, then you're going to pick class. If you want to enter a budget for a grant, you pick customer job. And these budgets don't talk to each other. All right. It's not like you have an overall budget and then you have these other budgets. They're 3 different budgets, and it's not like the class budget rolls into the overall budget. There is no overall budget. There's a budget by account. There are budget by program, by grant and account, and this is by class and account. We'll see these 2 later. We're just going to start with the basic budget first. So I'm going to click next. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can create your budget. One way is you can create a budget from scratch, means you'll type the numbers in yourself. Another way is to create the budget from previous year's actual data. Now, I want you to listen, okay? This is kind of cool. You would think, okay, well, where are we now? We are in October of 2020. And I'm just getting around to entering my budget for July of 20 to June of 2021, just like in real life, folks. So anyway, if I click create a budget from previous year's data, it sounds like a really good idea. What it's going to do is it's going to give me a budget screen with all the numbers from the previous year, the actual numbers, and I can use that as a starting point. It, of course, is going to let me alter them, but it's a great starting point. Last year's actuals. But let me ask you a question. This is my test. You can put the answer in the chat. So right now, it's October of 2020. So it wants me to create a budget from previous year's actuals, okay? So what year is it going to give me? What year is it going to give me the actuals for? If my year, last fiscal year, when did the last, yeah, Pete got it, 1920. No, not calendar, it's 1920. It's going to be the last fiscal year, okay? So that's right. And that's what I would want, right? I'm in the new year. I'd like to use the numbers from last year. But let me ask you this. Let's say I was doing this I was doing it timely. So I was doing it in April of 2020. And my year ends in June of 2020. So in April of 2020, I'm trying to do the budget for 2021. If I pick this, what's it going to give me? If I'm in fiscal year 2019-20 and I say I want prior year, Shauna's got it, or I'm not sure how to say that, but yeah, Linda's got it. It's 18-19. It's going to give me the previous fiscal year. It's going to give me the year before it, and that's not what I want. So see, if you're trying to enter a budget for next fiscal year and you're in the current fiscal year, you're not doing it after the fact, but you're doing it before the new year begins, you really want to base your budget on the current fiscal year's information, not on the prior year's actuals. Does anybody have a way that they think they might be able to trick the computer into thinking that it is next year, so it'll give me this year's current when it creates it? Does anybody have any ideas about how you might be able to trick the computer into changing what it thinks last fiscal year is? Change your system date. Good. What you do, if you go up here, that somebody said make the budget year 2021, 22. It based last fiscal year on what your system date is. So you have to fool QuickBooks into thinking that it's a future date. Then it'll give you last fiscal year, which will really be the year that you're working in, okay? So that's good. I'm going to do a budget from scratch, okay? Let's see. But this year is so wonky. Wouldn't a blend of 2019 and 20 make more sense? I agree. It won't let us do that. So maybe not this year would be the year. Maybe this is not a year you would create a budget from previous year's actual. Where do you change the system date? Right over here. It's in your computer. Let me just zoom in. You click on the little calendar or the little date and the time at the bottom right-hand corner of your computer screen. And you change the system date here. I think you changed the system date here. Maybe they changed where you have to change the system date. Where do you change the system date now? It used to be able to do it from here. Does anybody know where to do that? Where do you change? In settings? Okay. Not settings for QuickBooks. You do it in settings for your computer. All right. So I wonder if I just pick control panel, would it be in there? Let's see. People are like, Greg, I don't care about this. Is it in here somewhere? Time and date. Is that listed somewhere in here? Can't you right click on the date? Oh, let me see if that works. Yeah, there we go. Adjust time and date. That's much better. So right click on the date. Thank you, Barbara. All right. So I'm going to create a budget from scratch. So I'm going to click finish. So now what you have here is you have a list of accounts, income and expense accounts. This came from your chart of accounts list. It came from this list right here. So if you are given a budget that has an account on it that you don't see in this list, that means it's either not in the chart of accounts or somebody inactivated it. And that's why what I think you should do is to say, you know what? Whoever it is that's doing this budget, if it's some committee on the board or the ED or somebody else besides you, you should say, you know what? Here's a list of my chart of accounts. Please use this list. If they got a problem with using this list, then we need to have a talk, because we want you and them to be on the same page of what your chart of accounts list should look like, all right? What you do not want to be in the position of having to do is taking a QuickBooks set of financials and spending 3 days translating them into the budget line items so you can print a report that the board will be able to read. If you're doing that, you really need, this is what this class is for, to kind of help you do the budget within QuickBooks. And you may need to talk to them. They may be using accounts for tracking programs when they really should be using classes for that. All right. So anyway, so once you've got, see, my idea is to make it to where when you do the budget to actual report for the board, it doesn't take you 3 days. Okay. So that's my goal here. All right. So here is the income and the expense accounts. Now, there are two main ways that people do their budget. Some people, when they're budgeting by account, they enter a budget by month. In other words, they want to know how much they have budget numbers for every single month, and they want to know, for individual contributions, I think it's going to be 4,000 in August, it's going to be 6,000 in September, it's going to be 10,000. That's called budgeting by month. Some people, instead of doing that, they just budget by year. They just have a total budget for the entire year. So I want to see what you guys do. So I'm going to go ahead and start a poll here, and I want everybody to answer this. I want to know how many of you just put in, when you enter a budget, you just look, contributions is going to be 100,000 for the whole year, period. And whenever you do a budget to actual, your budget column is always the entire year, versus how many of you do it by month, which means I want a budget for every single month, okay? And almost everybody's answered. We got a few more. I'll leave the poll up for just a few more seconds. It's always interesting to see who's doing what here. So keep going, keep going, keep going. Some people look like they are putting it in the, some people do a quarterly budget or a 6-month budget. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling, and I'm going to share the results. And you can see that about 2/3 of you budget by year, and about a third, well, actually 40%. So 60% budget by year, 40% budget by something else. Most of you are budgeting by month if you're not budgeting by year, okay? So I'm going to teach you both ways of doing it. But the first thing I want to do, since 2/3 of you, or 60% of you, are budgeting by year, I want to show you why people like budgeting by month. So I'm going to exit out of here, and I'm going to show you something. I'm going to pull up a couple of reports that I've already kind of created. This is a budget to actual where I just budgeted by year. And this is a budget to actual where I budgeted by month. All right. So this is the by month one, and this is the by year one. So let me scroll this, make it to where you can see them. So as you can see, and actually they're different years, but don't worry so much about that. But as you can see, we'll act like this is the same. Actually, I'll just cover that up. So if you notice, this is July through September actuals. This is July through September actuals. So we'll just assume we'll act like it's the same year, okay? But if you notice, this is where you budget by year. So this budget is $55,000, and we've only gotten $4,901 in. See, this budget is 3 months. This budget is the entire year. Whereas if you budget by month, you can get, this is the 3 months actual. This is the 3-month budget. So I can really see how I'm doing and get better information, okay? Do you understand that? Does that make sense to you guys? I'm going to stop sharing the results and close this. Does that make sense? So Deborah had a question. I'm going to go ahead and I'll talk about this later. But yeah, in this particular window, you'll see that 3 months has gone by. That's a quarter of the year. So for those of you that do an annual budget, it's kind of like, well, it's hard to tell whether you've done good or bad, right? Because a quarter of the year's gone by. So, but is that good or is that bad? Seems like it's bad. We'll talk more about this later. But when we get into the reporting, I'll show you all the stuff that you can do. But at this point, let's just go back into creating the budget. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to budget by month. So, and I do want to ask you, why do you think that people don't like budgeting by month? Just be honest with me. Why do you think people don't like budgeting by month? Go ahead and type it in there. Yeah, it's more work. That's right. It's more work. You got to enter in 12 numbers for every single one of these accounts, which is kind of annoying. So let me show you 2 things that's going to make it easier for you. So listen up. So this will be cool. One of these things, a lot of you probably already know. One of these things, you probably have no clue. Now, this is only helpful if you're budgeting by month, okay? But anyway, I think most of you, by the time the end of webinar is over, you're going to be thinking about doing it. So anyway, check this out. I'm going to go individual contributions, 4,000, and 6,000. If the numbers are always different, and there's just kind of random depending upon what's going on, then you're going to have to type the numbers in. But some expense accounts are basically the same every single year. So say we've got, let's see, where's rent? Here's rent. So it's always $2,400 a month. So you see this button down here at the bottom that says copy across? You see that? Once I've typed it in the first column for the first month, if I click copy across, it copies it all the way across. So that's 11 things less I have to type. Now, I had some people in the chat say, well, okay, well, that's good, but I just know what my total amount is, like postage. I know that I budgeted $1,525 for the year, so I'll just divide it by 12, okay, and then I'll spread it across. So I wanted to show you that if you just have an annual budget, you can take it and right in this screen, you don't have to go to a calculator and divide 1525 by 12. I'm going to take this finger, okay, and I'm going to put it on well, I won't show you. I'm going to put it on the little backslash here, and it automatically turned it into a calculator. And then I'm going to push 12, and then I'm going to push the tab button, and it did the math for me. So I'm going to copy across. Now, the downside is that the total is 4 cents short. So I'm going to have to increase one of them by 4 cents. So what's that, 12? There we go. Now we're back at 1525. Okay. So, yeah, Donna, you just saw that I did formulas in the budget cells. Exactly. Okay. So that's, now, Deborah, it really wouldn't make sense to budget some accounts by month and some accounts by year, because when you look at a report, we'll do this one. This all needs to be either monthly or all needs to be yearly. Otherwise, it's going to be very complicated to figure out how you did. The ones that you just want to budget by year, maybe just divide them by 12, okay? So, all right. Anyway, enough of that. So the other button, this button here, and let me highlight it. This one you probably don't know about. It's called Adjust Row Amounts. This is when you have kind of a pattern of increasing or decreasing over a certain period of time. I'm going to go to we'll go to gas. So let's say, well, we'll do electricity. So electricity in the summertime, let me go down to electricity. In the summertime, electricity is really expensive because it's hot, so that's $650. August is also hot, but then it starts going down. So rather than trying to figure it out every month, all this, look, what I'm going to do instead is just give it a pattern. Check this out. You see where it says, now I want you to pay attention to this because this is, I'm going to test you on this. So I'm going to click Adjust Row Amounts, click it, and then I'm going to click on the currently selected month. I want to increase by, and I'll say actually decrease, it's going to start going down. So I'm going to say decrease by 5%. So then it's going to start decreasing by 5%. Now watch what happens when I click OK. Look what it did. Did it decrease by 5% in each of the columns? No, it didn't, okay? And I do this on purpose because I want you to understand this when you use this feature yourself so you're not thinking back going, Greg, you didn't tell me right. So I'm going to click this. What we did was we said we wanted to decrease by, and we put 5% here, but I want you to read these words. Decrease each remaining monthly amount in the row by this dollar amount or percentage. So I said 5%. So it's going to decrease by 5% each number in the row without regard to what was in the row before it. Okay? So 5% of 0 is 0. So it put 0 there. 5% lower than 0 is 0. 5% lower than 0 is 0. So what you want to do, you see this thing here? It says, will these instructions be available to us? Tanisha, am I not explaining this right? because that's what I'm here to do. So Tanisha, go ahead, and if this is confusing to you, then tell me so that I can repeat it again. So anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to click Enable Compounding right there. Enable Compounding. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And what this does, compounding means it's going to take 5% of the amount in the previous column and put 5% less in the next column. So I'm going to click OK. Now it's going down 5% a month. Does that make sense? All right. So don't forget, Tanisha, you're going to be able to have the recording to watch over and over and over again. So you don't have to worry about taking too many notes. Okay. All right, enough of that. So that's the two main tricks for those of you that want to budget by month to make your life a little bit easier. Now, obviously, if you want to budget by month, it may make more sense for you to use the prior year's actual because they'll be filled with all the months, okay? So that's it for budgeting by month. So now what I'm going to do is, yeah, it is a nice tip. Thank you. So now what I'm going to do, as a matter of fact, we should do this. There we go. All right. I should take some water. All right. All right, here we go. So I'm just stretching out here, trying to make this interesting for y'all. I should talk about my personal life is what I should do. That would be interesting. But anyway, so by year. Now, I know a number of you are like, look, dude, I just want the column for budget always to be annual. I'm fine with that, okay? So if that's what you want to do, you want to budget by year, then I'm going to go to company. I'm going to go to planning and budgeting. I'm going to go to set up budgets. I'm going to click create new budget. I'll pick the year. So far we do everything the same. Next, next, and finish. Now, since you budget by year, you would think that you would put the annual total right there. That column would be open. You could just put a number in it, and that would be, you'd be finished. But you can't, okay? This is grayed out. You can't, okay? Now, those 5 or 6 of you that are in the online edition, I show you how you actually can do it in the online edition. But anyway, that's a different story. So in desktop, you can't put the annual here. So what you have to do is you have to put it in one of these 12 columns. This is just a total. So which column do you think you would put it in? It's going to be one of these 12 months. Which one do you think it would be? Which one do you think it would be? So it's the same thing I always see. A lot of people think it's the first month of the year, and then there's a lot of people that think it's the last month of the year, right? So I'm going to explain something to you, and then I'm going to ask you again, okay? So here's the deal. I'm going to pull up my little report. I've already memorized it. And again, I'm going to show you how to build these reports later, but all right. So whenever I pull up a budget to actual column, listen carefully. Where does it get the numbers for the actual column, and where does it get the numbers for the budget column? Well, the first thing it does is it looks at the date range. In this report, I'm doing July 1 of 19 through September 30 of 19. So then it says, okay, I'm only going to pull transactions for those 3 months, and that's what I'm going to put in here. So this has all the literal transactions you entered, the deposits, the checks, the bills, stuff like that. Where does it get this one from? The budget. It gets it from the budget screen, but it looks at this date and it says July, August, and September. So then what it does is it goes to the budget screen and it only looks at July, August, and September. And whatever's in the first 3 columns here is what it's going to put right here, okay? So in other words, it's kind of like it assumes you're budgeting by month, okay? So because it looks at the time period and only pulls the budget from the columns during that time period, you tell me now, should you put it in the first month or the last month of the year? Yeah, the first. Because if you put it in the last month of the year, then your budget column will be blank until you get to the end of the year. So you always have to put it in the first month of your year, which is exactly what I did right here. I put it in the first month of the year. Now, just a little, may seem obvious to you, but it's not to everybody. All of the numbers that you put in here are positives. Even the expenses, you put them in as positive numbers, okay? So this is where you're budgeting by account only, all right? Now, the thing about this, and I'm gonna go back to this, let's see where we're doing. Okay. Yeah, I think we're doing fine. All right. So this is just for those of you that budget by year. If you budget by year, and I'm going to go back to this and look at this, it says individual contributions were $49.01 for the first 3 months of the year. Our annual budget is $55,000. We've gotten in 9% of our budget. 25% of the year has gone by. I want your knee-jerk reaction. Don't think, just answer. Is that good or bad? What do you think? Is that good or bad? Put it in the chat. Is that good or bad? It's bad. What do you think this percentage should be? Just knee-jerk reaction. 25, because 25% of the year's gone by, okay? So Vicky, of course, is way ahead of the game. So the thing is, if you assume 25%, what are you assuming about how you get your donations in? What are you assuming about how you and when you get your they're evenly distributed. Are they evenly distributed? Absolutely not. Nevertheless, that's the problem with budgeting by year. Because now you're like, I don't really know whether I did good or bad. So the board, all things being equal, and it's not because the board's stupid, it's just because human nature says we always start from equilibrium. All things being equal, this should be 25%. Anything that varies greatly from 25%, that's where you're going to get a question from a board member. So I want to kind of prepare you so that you can be ready for your questions and already have answers. So let me show you what I do here. I'm going to click on the Excel button. Create new Excel. I'm going to send this to Excel. Now, of course, you're probably saying, Greg, if I wanted to do it in Excel, I wouldn't have come to this webinar. But if you have an annual budget, this is what I do. It only takes an extra minute or so. I'm going to click Excel. You just have to Excel on your computer. It doesn't have to be open. It'll open it for you. I'm going to click Export. And then what I like to do is I like to alter the Excel and make it be more informative. So this is actually the annual budget. So I'm going to type annual budget there. And then in the percent of budget, I'm going to put 25% because everybody's thinking about it anyway. And then I can put notes next to the ones that changed. Give me a break. Wait till December. Okay. So that's basically kind of a solution to get around the problem of budgeting by year. I'm going to give you one more thing, then I'll answer a couple questions. We'll take a break. Y'all are going to love me on this one if you don't know this already. You see these little blank columns between the columns with numbers? Do y'all get that whenever you send it to Excel? Go ahead and chat me up. Do y'all get these little blank columns? Yeah, what do y'all think about that? Do y'all like those or do they annoy you? Anybody annoyed by them? Karen loves them. Whereas there are other people, annoying. Okay. Stacy doesn't like them. Minor hates them. So for those of you that hate them, check me out. When I send a report over to Excel, watch very carefully. When I send a report over to Excel, create new Excel worksheet, you're going to see, before it goes over, you're going to see this button here called Advanced. I want you to push this button. When you push this button, you see this thing that says space between columns? That's why it's appearing, okay? So all you have to do is uncheck this. And when you uncheck it, I'm going to click Export. It'll open it up in Excel. Now the columns won't be there. The other thing about it is not only will they not be there on this report, they ain't going to be there for any reports for you anymore. It's global. It happens permanently. Okay? Yay, isn't that cool? So I'm going to do a couple of questions here because I know where there's some people that had questions. I'm going to scroll back up here. And where are those questions in the chat? Let's see. For annual budget, if you are looking only, this is Samantha, only at Q2, your budget for the first month would be absent. Correct. That's right. If you looked at only at Q2, that's right. Let's see. Yes, the recording will be available. There is one more thing that I want to show you. This is for people that budget monthly. I'm going to go back to that budget monthly, the budgeted by month report. If you budget by month, and I'm just going to build this. I've had these reports memorized. I'm actually going to build them for you now. Whenever you want to do a budget to actual report, you go to budgets and forecasts, budget versus actual. I'm going to go ahead and click it. And then you pick your year you want to do a budget for. I'll do 1920. I'm going to click next. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to click finish. Now, the first time you pull it up, when you're doing a budget to actual, the default is that it's giving you the actual for the month, the budget for the month, and the variance in both dollar and percent. And then it gives you 4 columns for August, 4 columns for September. It assumes you're budgeting monthly. If you're budgeting yearly, you don't need this. So I'm going to go to show columns, and I'm going to make it total only. All right. Now, if you budget by month, though, I'm going to go to budget by month, reports, budgets and forecasts, budget versus actual. Now, I budgeted by month for this previous year. Now, this is a report that you wouldn't give the board, but you might give somebody on an executive committee. July's actual, sorry, I don't have numbers here. July's budget, variance. August actuals, August budget, variance. September's actual, September's budget, variance, okay? That might be an executive committee or a finance committee or an ED, but I'm still going to make it total only right here. All right. So, and then, yeah, I think that's everything that I needed to say about that. So it's 2:52. And so let me see if there's anybody else with some major questions before we go. Let's see. Is there a way to add a column for the full year budget? Yes, there is. So those of you, listen carefully, those of you that budget by month, you're going to want to have a full year's column. So let me show you what I mean here. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to go to reports. This is only for those of you that budget by month. You'll love this. Because see, if I budget by month, let me just show you. If I'm budgeting by month and only a portion of the year has gone by, let me show you what I mean here. September. So we'll say the last, just July, August, and September. I'll click refresh. It's giving me the actuals, the budget, and the variance, but it's not giving me my year-to-dates, and it's not giving me the annual budget. So it's kind of like, well, if you budget by month, now I'm only getting a budget to actual for the time period I'm looking at. I'm not getting the whole year. So they have this report under budgets and forecasts, and it's called a profit and loss budget performance. Okay, so I'm going to click it, and I pick the year that I want to do it for. Let's see, 18 to 19. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to where it's just 1 month. I'm just going to do May. So let's say I'm reporting for May. Look what we have here. We have May's actual. We have May's budget. Then we have year-to-date actual. Then we have year-to-date budget. And then we have the annual budget. We have everything on here. All right. All right, let's get moving, folks. We've got another half hour or so. And more questions. So the first thing is easy. I'll do this. Somebody wanted to know how to add budget, how to add percentage columns. So if you click on this customize report here, this is where you can add a dollar difference, and this is where you can add a percentage difference. So the person who wanted to know about that, that's where you go to do it. See, so now we've got the actuals, the budget, and the dollar amount and the percent amount. And that's true for any of your budget to actual reports that you have in QuickBooks. All right. Then the person who wanted to add the prior year actuals. So, and there's more than one of you actually. So this kind of sucks. So let me show you how this works. So we're going to do this. And I know a lot of you need the prior year's actual on it. So, all right. So I'm going to go to reports, and I'm going to go to budget, and I'm going to go to budget to actual, and I'm going to do it for my annual budget here. And we'll just make it total only. Let's see, over here. Show columns total only. And this is my little cheat sheet here. So I'm going to say 3 months has gone by. So I'm going to go back. This is how you would typically do it for those of you that budget by year. So here's your 3 months actual. Whoops. Here's your 3 months actual. Here's your annual budget. And then here's your variance. So let's say that I want to have the actuals from the prior year. So I'm going to tell you that you're not going to be able to get it directly out of QuickBooks to the person who asked. So you're going to need to send 2 reports over to Excel and put them on the same screen. But I'm going to do you better than that, because I'm going to show you how to do it and a problem that happens and how to resolve the problem. Okay, so we're going to walk you through this. Is everybody ready? Tell me you're ready. Okay, there we go. Great. Okay, great. Oh, the path for the performance, you go to reports, budget, and profit and loss budget versus for present loss budget performance. Somebody wanted to know where it is. All right. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'll leave this one up on the screen. Let me make it a little bit smaller. There we go. And I'll get rid of this home page too. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the prior year's actuals. So I'm just going to do a regular P&L, but I'm going to change the date range to 7/01/18 to 09/30/18. So then basically this is July through September of 18. This is July through September of 19. So I basically want this column stuck on the end. Now, but I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Okay. Does anybody see a problem? I'm just going to show you. I'm just looking at this. Does anybody see a problem if we put both of these on the same sheet? Anybody see a problem? What's the problem? Not all the accounts are the same. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to click on Excel. For those of you that don't know, I'm going to show this. I'm going to say create new worksheet. And I'm going to click export. And here's my worksheet. So I'm kind of paying attention. The name of it right now is Book 2. Okay. So now I'm going to go over to the other report. And I'm going to send this to the same Excel spreadsheet I'm going to say update. There's one that says update existing worksheet. I don't want to update a worksheet. Okay, I want to add it as a separate tab in this workbook. This is called Book 2. So I'm going to pick, if you don't know this, each one of these tabs is a sheet, and then the whole thing is a book. So anyway, I'm going to say in existing workbook, and it wants to know where is this workbook. So I'm going to go ahead and save this somewhere. File. Save as, and I'm just going to save it as Book 2, and I'll put it on my desktop, so it'll be real easy to find, because this is a webinar, and I don't want to waste your time. All right, so now I'm going to click Browse, And there it is. I'm going to click open. And now it's ready. So I'm going to click export. And now it's changing the workbook. So now when I go back to the workbook, you're going to see two sheets. Here's sheet 2, which is the July through September of 18. Here's sheet 1, which are with our original. So ideally, it'd be like, okay, well, this is no problem. I'm just going to highlight all this, and I'm going to Control C, copy it, or Command C if you're in a Macintosh world, and then Control V to paste. And this is the problem that people were talking about. It doesn't line up properly. So here's how to resolve that problem. I'm going to go ahead and close this. So basically what I'm going to do is for each one of the reports, I've got 2 of them, I want them to have the same rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on custom. Wait, let me just make this big so I can see where it is. Let's see. Is it in customize? Yeah, I guess it is. Customize. You see this thing that says advanced? I'm going to push it. And rather than just showing, right now it's only showing active rows. The rows are the accounts, which means it's only showing active accounts, which means it's only showing accounts that have been used. So if an account was not used last year and was used this year, then it won't be there in one of the 2 reports. If I pick all, then it's going to show all of the accounts regardless of whether or not they were used. Okay, so I'm going to pick that one, and then I'm going to go back over to the other report, which is, I guess it's this one. I think it's that one. Let's see. No, I think this has all of them in there. Hold on, let me see if I already changed this one. Yeah, that's the one I changed. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the other report, and I'm going to customize it. Click Advanced and make it all. And now they're always going to line up. See, now it's never going to be a problem. They're always going to line up. All right, so does that make sense? Frank says 20 years in QuickBooks and I'm still afraid of the advanced button. Julie has another idea. Choose a report with budget to actual, and if you budgeted for all accounts each year, you would always have all rows even if the actual amount is 0 because the budget will have an amount. That's true. So I guess if you inactivate any accounts that you're not going to have a budget for and make sure they stayed inactive for 2 years, you'd be okay. But that's an interesting idea. I like that. All right. Is there a way to make it ignore inactive when you do that? There is not a way to make it ignore inactive when you do that. All right. So we've got 20 minutes left. I think that's the reporting stuff that I wanted to show you. The rest of the time, I'm going to talk about budgeting by grant and budgeting by program. But before I do that, there is one little other thing I want to point out. In QuickBooks Desktop, and this is different from online, in QuickBooks Desktop, when you go to enter a budget, let's see, planning and budgeting, set up budgets, create new budget, you can really only enter one budget by account for the fiscal year. You can also enter a second budget by grant and a third budget by class, but you know, effectively, if you're just budgeting by account, which is what most people do, you can only enter one budget, which is fine. You should only have one budget a year. You shouldn't be changing your budget. I have some people, they're like, every month they want to sit and change their budgets because different things happened during the month that they didn't know about. And then they want to change the budget because of these changes. And it's like, dude, that's what the budget's for. This was your plan. And that's why we're doing a budget to actual, to see that we varied from the plan, how much, and then in the board meeting, you talk about why. If you just change the budget every month, you might as well not have a budget at all. But anyway, sometimes a change is so big that it warrants doing a new budget. Like, for instance, COVID, right? And so this year, you may want to do a different budget, okay? So in the desktop version, it doesn't look like you can do it, but you actually can. If you go to lists, I'm sorry, not lists. If you go to company, planning and budgeting, you'll see something that says set up forecast. Now, if you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be great, it'll roll forward my cash and I can see whether I make it, when I'm going to run out of cash in the future because it's going to forecast it for me. No, it's not. This is simply a second budget. They call it a forecast. It's BS. It's another budget. So I've used this to do a second budget that's an after COVID budget, basically. So that then reports, budget and forecasts, if I do a budget versus actual, I can compare my actual numbers to my original budget, which is what happens here. Whereas if I go to reports, budget, and forecast, and I do a forecast versus actual, because that's where I put my COVID budget, and now I can look at, and I'll make this total only, so that you can compare them, so we can see the actual numbers are the same, but this was my original budget, this is my COVID budget. Notice how I thought individual contributions were going to be 55, now they're 25. I thought government grants were going to be 17, now they're 100 because I got a giant PPP loan, okay? So, all right. Now, let's do, everybody cool with that? Is it a cash flow projector? Barb, heck no, it's not. It's not. I'm going to go to this. Look, company, planning and budgeting, setup forecast. It's the same exact window. It's just a second budget. Okay. Would that be the best way to enter a mid-year budget revision? Yes, it would. Create a second budget. That way you don't lose the original one. Forecasts. If you have put in a forecast at the beginning of the year, as the year progresses, is there a way to have it update with actuals for the month so that already have gone by and have a true cast for the full? Heck no. No, it doesn't. Great idea, though. All right. Barb, it's not listed in my choices. What's not listed in your choices? I don't understand that. It's always listed in your choices. Company, planning and budgeting, set up budgets, set up forecast. It's there. All right, enough of that. So let's move. Now, this will only take a few minutes, but it's actually really? Do you have QuickBooks Premier or do you have QuickBooks Plus, Barb? What program do you have? Maybe you have a really old version. All right. Anyway, so if you go to company, planning and budgeting. Oh, let me go to a different data file. I have to go to a different data file that I've already created this in. Let's see. Yeah, Barb, she has Pro and it's old. So you need to go to TechSoup. It's only $60 to get a new program. They just came out with version 2021, by the way. It's really cool. All right, so now what I'm going to do, thank you, Erica. So Erica says QuickBooks forecast is only in QuickBooks Premier. Is the forecast feature in QuickBooks Online? Absolutely not. But the benefit of Online Edition is, unlike desktop, you can have as many budgets for the same year as you want. Okay, Donnell. All right, so I'm going to go to company and we're going to do a budget by class, planning and budgeting, set up budgets, create a new budget. You pick your fiscal year, P&L, and then what you do is you click class right here. You click next. I already have created one. The screen's exactly the same, okay? It's exactly the same. It has all the accounts. The only thing that's different is you have a class up here. So what you do is you basically, you pick your program, and then you enter a budget for all of the line items, and then you click Save. And then you click the next program, and then you enter a budget for all of those line items, and then you click Save. And then you do the next one, and then you click Save. And then you do one for the admin, and you click Save, and you do one for fundraising, and you click save. So that's the key. There are people that are like, they budget by program by using accounts that are program accounts versus admin accounts versus fundraising accounts that are in the chart of accounts list, and it makes the chart of accounts list really long because you have supplies for programs, supplies for admin, supplies for fundraising, travel for fundraising, travel for program, travel for admin. I mean, so you end up with a bunch of accounts. This way, you won't have as many accounts if you use classes for program, admin, and fundraising, okay? So you enter each budget. So it's all within the same budget. It's like little mini budgets for each class. If you enter a budget for every single program, including admin and including fundraising, then you don't have to enter an overall budget. You'll never be going in and planning and budgeting, set up budgets, create new budget. You'll never pick this. It's kind of like either you'll pick this if you don't want to budget by program, or you'll pick this if you do. But there's no reason to pick both, because if you pick this, it gives you the ability to enter a budget for every single class, including admin and fundraising. So I'm going to pull up a report now, budget versus forecast, budget versus actual, and then you look for the one that says P&L by account and class, okay? So here it is. I'm going to click next. Now I want to stop, and I want you to look at this, because it ignores the fact that you've budgeted by class, and it adds them all up, and it's still going to give you columns for each month without regard to your class budgets at all. It totals them all up, and this gives it to you by month. That's stupid, okay? We're going to click this and make it be account by class. Now the columns will be for each program, and then one for admin and one for fundraising. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to collapse this to make it a little bit prettier. Look how cool this is. For the Guidance Center, here is the actuals, here's the budget, here's the dollar and the percent. Here's the Synergy Conference, actual budget, dollar, percent. I'm going to go ahead and customize this. I'm going to get rid of the percent. I only want to see the dollar difference. Makes it a little bit easier to read. So now we've got the Guidance Center, the Synergy Conference, the Aware Campaign, admin, and fundraising. This is something you could give to an executive committee or a finance committee. The overall board, it's still too many columns. And so what I'm going to do is I just go to show columns and make it total only, and I end up with the same thing that we just looked at. You see, totals. It's very easy, okay? But they don't know about it. The board doesn't, the overall board doesn't, but you can look at it by class as well, okay? If you've already used accounts for programs, is there any way to easily clean it up without screwing up previous years? It's a big question, and it's something that we can help you with tech support. I would say that I would probably start using it going forward is what I would probably start doing. How do you print it out? How do you print it out for the executive committee? This is always a problem I've had. How do you print? How do you click print? Oh, when there's too many columns, you're saying? How do you print it out? The one by class, yes. Okay, this, too many columns. Yeah, I agree. It ends up being messy. I'll be honest with you. I send it over to Excel and I print it in Excel. Okay. Now, another thing that I can do that will help you, you see where it has Guidance Center, Synergy Conference, Aware Campaign. Well, those are all programs. So let me show you something here. You might like this. What I like to do, I'll create a class called Programs. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I won't ever point anything to it, but I'm going to put the 3 programs, I'm going to make them subs of it. Then I get a total program. See, I have the Aware Campaign, Synergy Conference, Guidance Center, then total, then admin, fundraising. Now you're like, Greg, you've even added more columns. Starting in version 2020 of desktop, you see this collapse columns over here? It will allow you to collapse the subs under program. I'm going to go ahead and click it. It started in version 2020, so it's in version 2020 and 21. Now all I have is program, admin, fundraising total. Maybe I'll get rid of my variance. And now I've got something that you can probably print on one page. All right, so enough of that. So I'm going to finish with the budgeting by grant. Now, if you're going to budget by grant, and this is, yes, you can print each class separately. Yes, I'm sorry. You just run budget versus actual, and then you simply filter it. Filtering works the opposite way than you would think. You would click on customize, and then you would click filter, and you don't filter out what you want kept out. You put a filter in for what you want to keep in. So class, I'd say all I want is the guidance center, and then I click OK, and it just gives me the guidance center. It's giving it to me by month, but there, now it's just giving me the guidance center. Okay, so let's see. So company, planning and budgeting, set up budgets. So if you want to budget for a grant, the first thing you need to do is you need to put the grant in your customer list. Now, this is the thing where people get confused. Right here, when it asks what year you want to enter a budget for your budgeting by account or your budgeting by your program, it makes sense you would put your fiscal year. But when it comes to budgeting by grant, that doesn't make any sense, because my grant year may not equal my fiscal year. My fiscal year may end in December, but the grant year ends in September, or the grant may go 2 years. So how do I do that then? What year do I pick? I'm going to tell you the rules, so listen very carefully. When you're budgeting by grant and you're in this screen, you pick the year that contains the first month of your grant year. You pick the fiscal year that contains the first month of your grant year. So if my grant year began April of 2020, then that is, my year ends June of 2020, so that's the 1920 year, so you pick this one. You click next, you click customer, you click next, you click finish, you pick your grant, and you enter your budget. And then you pick your next grant, and then you enter your budget. If you enter as many budgets for grants that start in that year, if you have a grant that starts in another fiscal year, then you pick a different fiscal year to enter that in, okay? So, and you put the whole, what I do is I put the whole grant in the first month. Let me show you. Let's see, 1920, I'm going to pick one in particular, the Villa Foundation. So this grant started in January. So I put January of 2020. But as you can see, it is actually a multi-year grant. So I could have put the entire multi-year in the first month of the first year, but what I did instead was I put some of it in this year, the 1920 year, and then if I go back to an older year, and let's see, I go back to the Villa Foundation, here's where I put the rest of it. So the total was 120, 50 in one year and 70 in the other. I will still be able to look at them collectively. Let me show you. When I enter expenses, just so that you understand, you put the grant right here, Villa Foundation, okay? But now when I look at a report, I'm going to do reports and budgets and forecasts, budget versus actual. This time I'm going to pick customer and account, or account and customer. And it really doesn't matter which one of these that says customer I pick, because I'll be able to expand it to include all years, and it'll add all the budgets together for a grant and all the actuals together for the grant, okay? So I'm going to pick profit and loss, by account and customer job 1920. Again, it's going to lump them all together and forget about the grants and just give it to me by month. I want it by account and customer. And now I'm going to filter it for the grant that I want. So I'm going to go to filters and I'm going to go to the customer list here, name and Villa Foundation. And now I've got a budget to actual for the Villa Foundation. Now this is a multi-year grant. There's the 70,000. It didn't pick up the 50,000 because I entered that in a prior year's budget. But all I got to do is change this date range up here so that it includes that prior year. And now refresh it. And now it pulled the actuals for the entire period and it pulled the budget for the entire period. Okay, so now I get my actuals compared to budget, and that's how that works. All right, so let's see, Judy, we have a grant starting in July of 21. It's a 3-year grant. We do calendar years, so I split grant and put amounts in July of 21, January of 22, and January of 23. The grant starts in July of 21, so I think you would do July of 21, July of 22, and July of 23. Is I think what you would do. Your calendar year, when you do a calendar year report, it'll take that all into account. Deborah, we sell some products and use our customer invoicing to track the inventory we send for charitable purposes. How do you distinguish between actual customers and grants? So what I do is use customer type for that. And I'll show you one more time. I showed you at the beginning of the class, and I'll show you again. But when you go to enter a customer, under additional info, there's a customer type. So I would simply add one of these for customers, and then one for restricted grants, and then one for closed restricted grants. The other thing that I can do is I can control what is on this page. When I look at my customer center, it always has this balance. Unless you do invoicing, the balance is always 0, so this is meaningless. So what I like to do is go to, I think it's under edit, let's see, customize columns. It'll only appear when you pull up the customer center, and then I can control what appears. The reason why the balance and the attach is there is because it's there. So I'm going to remove those, and I'm going to add my customer type. And I'm going to add it. So now the customer type appears here, and you'll be able to see at a glance your grants, which is really cool. Define closed restricted grants. So it's 3:30, and I don't want to teach more about restricted grants because it's kind of out of the scope of the course. But I will tell you that closed restricted grant is a grant who has all the money's been used and it's gone. Okay. Is there a way to upload an Excel budget file into QuickBooks? Yes, there is, but by the time you got the formatting right, you could have done it yourself manually. So I would not do that. All right. So what I do want to do, this is my little pitchy thing. How are y'all feeling? Was this good? Did y'all learn? I hope so. If you are interested, if you like the way I teach, we have a 3-day webinar series that's coming up. If you click on webinars, it's coming up in November for the desktop users, and for the online users. So November 10th, 11th, and 12th for desktop, and 15th, 16th, and 17th for online. I'm going to go ahead and click here. It's everything you'd ever want to know about QuickBooks, soup to nuts. And this is everything we covered in the first day. This is everything we cover in the second day. It's 2 hours a day. And you'll see in the third day, we cover tracking restricted grants. We also cover special fundraising events. We cover pledges. We cover credit card activities. We cover thank you letters. We cover in-kind contributions. All of that's just on day 3. So this is a great way to learn. It's $249 normally, and we're giving it to you for $30 off. This is a sale, and I think the sale is finished Saturday night. $249 normally, $219 with the code. It's NPQ30, NPQ30, both for online and both for desktop. And you sign up to it for it by going to QuickBooks Made Easy. So I'll stay on and answer a few more questions. If I go to tech support, if you want to sign up for tech support with us, if you don't already have it, this is a year of tech support. I'll click desktop. It's $4.99 normally. With this coupon right down here, NPQ Tech, TECH. Instead of $4.99, it's only $2.99. It's $200 cheaper. You'll be able to talk to me, Barb, Paige, Jenny, or Deb. We can dial into the software and help you with your problems, even if they don't relate to QuickBooks. And then finally, this is the best. If you want a Bible of learning about QuickBooks on demand, you can start learning this tomorrow. You don't have to wait for November. We have a bundle. It's basically training on demand. It's normally $400 for 16 hours of learning on demand. It comes with a follow-along handbook. It's just like being in this webinar. We're giving it to you for $298. This sale, as well as the tech support sale, ends on October the 31st. But when you sign up for that bundle, you simply go over to On Demand. You click there, and this is where you get the nonprofit training course. This becomes the Bible. And once you signed up, you just kind of log in. I'll go into my account, and then you'll be able to access all of the training. Again, it comes with follow-along handbooks. And here is Beyond the Essentials desktop. I can click on it, and I can go to any class I want to. This is a geeky picture of me. Here is, let's see. There's special events right here. I can click on it and get to all the different topics related. I'll click on it, and you can just watch the various videos, and you follow along. So that's kind of how that works.
Welcome back. Before I get into...
Okay, enough of that. All right, so it's 3:34. So do you want to give him a goodbye, Gene, and then I'll stay on and see if anybody has any questions for a couple of minutes, and then we'll finish.
Sure, that's very kind. I just wanted to officially thank you on behalf of the MPQ team, and thank you, Bill and Barbara, for being here and taking so many questions today. Thanks for your partnership, Greg. It was a great session.
Cool.
When you do complete, there will be a pop-up evaluation that's just 4 questions and helps both of our teams refine our offerings. So please do complete that. And thanks everyone for being here.